Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Well, hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to episode 104. Today we have another Nancy Drew Digest for you. This one, number 158, The Curse of the Black Cat.
I cannot contain my excitement.
I know. Okay, so this one is obviously what Warnings at Waverly Academy is based off of. I loved this, Kori.
Yes.
I loved this book so much.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's just the fact that like a boarding school mystery is like my genre. Like that's that's my exact genre setting. Like
Yeah.
if I would read 1,000 boarding school mysteries and I would never feel the need to read anything else, I would be completely satisfied with that. But I just thought it was so good. It was like quick and short, but it was like constantly exciting, very interesting, intriguing, all that stuff. And I feel like just the fact that it was like about teenage girls and like drama and gossip or whatever, it was just so fun to read. It was so satisfying.
Right? Oh, this entire block of episodes, all these digests that we've done that inspired the games, it's like each one I'm more and more excited than the last one to cover it. It's just so good.
I know, and we just came off the Bluebeard room too, so
I
like
know.
how to even begin to top that.
Right.
You know? I feel like this one did a pretty good job.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so. There are a couple things about it that I am not a super fan of, but it did not decrease my enjoyment of them at all. And one of them is that they somehow managed to use Bess as a damsel in distress, even though she was barely in the book at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, the when we went to the convention last year, I hadn't read this book when we went, but that was, of course, one of the books that was like the theme book for the convention, so it did get spoiled for me a little bit. And I was like, okay, maybe that won't happen with Bess, even though we kind of talked about it at the convention. I was like, maybe they just kind of made that up for the little premise of the mystery that we were trying to solve as a game at the convention. It was still in there. So
I actually totally forgot about that.
Really?
Yes.
I knew the thing with Bess that happens. I knew that was going to happen just because they had mentioned it at the convention. But even so, did not ruin my enjoyment of it at all. So,
yeah, so that was one of them. And then the other one is just that I feel like there were a little bit too many characters for me to like get attached to any of them properly, or like really to like, you know, sink our teeth into our claws. Dare I say,
yes,
enough where I felt like we could really like explore everyone and get a good idea for who the characters actually were. But like again, overall, I feel like it was still, all the characters were super cool, dynamic, like interesting. Eliza is absolutely my favorite character.
Oh my gosh, right?
And hashtag justice for Eliza, because they really hated on her in this book, and I do not think it was fair at all.
We need to talk about Eliza. We will. We
need to talk about the treatment of Eliza for sure. But then other than that, I think it was great. I think it was pretty perfect. It was like so like just female centric. Like there were barely any male characters in this book. And I did the thing, you know, like the Bechdel test, where it's like, if there are, you know, it passes the Bechdel test if there are two named female characters who speak to each other about anything other than a man. I don't think this book passes like the reverse of the Bechdel test. So there aren't.
No.
I mean, we do have several named male characters, but they never speak to each other.
Right, yeah.
And most of them don't even really appear in the book. Only one, I think, male character actually is physically present in the book that Nancy like speaks to, and he's the secretary of the headmistress of the school.
What a twist on gender norms.
Like it was so, I was like so thankful, so grateful. It was so refreshing to read a book that was literally just about women. I loved it.
And that's just like the game. Of course, it's a girls' school. It makes sense that you would only have female students, and the faculty is also going to be largely women.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was so good.
Even though the characters in this are different from the characters in the game, and it's still the same school and everything, it kind of felt like almost just reading a different version of like what other people at the school were experiencing at the same time as Waverly.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously you five aren't the only people at this school. Other people must have a different perspective as well. It just kind of felt like a different perspective of the same mystery, even though ultimately it is a different mystery with a different culprit, obviously, because the culprit is not in the game. But
right. Yeah. No, yeah, totally. And I really do think I love the way that Her Interactive adapted this book, because obviously the Edgar Allan Poe stuff in the book is, of course, not nearly as much as they highlight it in the game. And of course, we have to have like our like historical contexts or something for our players to learn about in a Nancy Drew PC game. And I absolutely love that they picked Edgar Allan Poe, which it just makes sense to do.
Of course.
And then, we kind of changed the characters a little bit, and we kind of changed the situation a little bit in that they are all valedictorian candidates. That's not the case in the book. And they're all competing for this like one scholarship. That makes so much more sense, honestly, in my opinion, than what like it actually turned out to be in the book. But I still like the book. I still like the way the book played out. But it just makes so much more sense to focus on that, and then we're able to kind of get more familiar with each of these specific characters. We're able to know them better and go into more depth about who they are than we actually do in the book, because there's just such a wide range of characters. Like there's freshmen and seniors, and they're just teachers, and they're all doing their own thing,
right.
Whereas to have a group of girls who are all there for the same reason, it lets us kind of explore their differences a little bit more,
Plus the whole Gossip Girl angle of the game was obviously
Yes.
added by Her Interactive. It was such a good choice. I think that made it perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love it.
oh gosh.
Do you want to talk about the cover, Kori?
Yes. So I think because this is an Aladdin, it's number 158. I think there's only one cover, which we both have the same here. So
That's what I think too. I couldn't find any other copies with a different cover outside of, I don't even know. I didn't even see any international versions of this, but I'm sure there are some. But yeah, I see the cover illustrator right there. Franco Acornero.
is this an illustration?
Yeah.
Or is it a photo?
It's hard to say. I think the backdrop maybe somehow illustrate. It's hard. Yeah, no, it's hard to tell. It's definitely a photo style cover. So, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of these.
Yeah.
This type of cover definitely populated most of the books that like I actually read growing up, all of these digests. And so like it just feels very familiar. But yeah, I don't love it. I don't know. It is like an actual scene out of the book. So got to give it props for that. This is the cover of this is Nancy and George. They're standing there with a black cat curse note that Nancy has just received next to her bike. So that does really happen pretty early on in the book too. Nancy is wearing a pink kind of puffer jacket, which is actually kind of iconic too, I have to say. And so maybe like black stretch pant legging type situation. And George has curly dark hair on the top of this one. And a red scarf and a tan jacket and jeans. So it's pretty standard. They seem to be standing in front of probably the main Waverly building. And it's snowy in the background. Very winter-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks a lot like the game, just the front of the school with obviously the red brick building behind them and then the big tree off behind that.
Yeah, the tree. Yeah.
I think that might be a pond next to it, though, or behind the tree, I should say.
Oh, I didn't
It's hard
notice
to
that.
tell.
It could be. Could be.
It could just be like a big field, but it looks like it could potentially be a little frozen over
Yeah.
from the coloration. But
Yeah.
does Nancy's hair look a little pink to you, or is that
Yes.
just like her blondness reflecting the pink jacket?
That's exactly what I was gonna say, Corey, is that it looks her hair looks pink. It looks like it has some kind of pink undertone. And yeah, it may be because she is so blonde on this cover that it is it's like shiny, that it's reflecting off of the pink puffer jacket. But it was almost distracting to me when I looked at it because her hair kind of almost blends into her jacket a little bit. So it's like pretty noticeable that it's pink toned. I think that's the most noticeable thing on this cover, in fact, actually. But
yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's a fine cover, I think. Yeah.
So 2001, I mean, this type of cover was very popular around that time. So it's not my favorite, but it does definitely, like, as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, that's Waverly Academy. You know, I don't even need to see the title, just the picture itself. That's Waverly. Easy.
So it's effective. It's effective even if it's not our favorite. Okay, but 3 words.
Black cats. I don't know. Curses. Black cat curses.
We gotta have cats. Well, because there's the black cat, but then there's also like the stories about the cats. Like we even talk about Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, talk about the cats in that. Of course, there is an actual black cat in the book called Catastrophe, which I love. I love that name. That's the cutest thing I've ever heard. And then also one of the characters in the books has a cat too. So like cats are just everywhere. There's a band called the Black Cats, like cats. And then I kind of think cliques or gossip, or I don't know, it's not so much gossip as it is just like girls being kind of cliquish and clannish, you know?
Just girl boarding school drama.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't know other than that. I mean, we could talk about like wintertime or snow.
Oh my gosh, you guys, the way that the game depicts the changing of the season, how at the start it's just kind of moody and gloomy, and by the end you're in like a full-on blizzard. That's exactly what happens in the book. They did the perfect job of portraying how that happens, because I think it's also set during the like just about to be Thanksgiving break or just about to be fall break, something like that.
So it's actually different. It's actually February, I believe.
Oh, is it?
I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere in there that it is like February.
Oh man, I could have sworn they said fall break. Darn it.
Maybe I'm just thinking that because that's when. No, they said a winter break.
Well, because something at the start, something that they said made me think that this would be kind of more January, February time. But then later, the way that they spoke about it, I was like, oh no, that does definitely sound like it could be the little break that you go on and then you just come back for finals or whatever.
So they said midwinter weekend is what they're closing for. Midwinter.
That sounds to me like January, February time.
Right. Yeah. So not like, not a holiday break, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere in here, but I may just be confusing that with the fact that this episode is coming out actually on Valentine's Day, which we should have said Happy Valentine's Day, regular truths. But yeah, I could have sworn. I remember thinking that like it was kind of wild because I was just thinking about Nancy and George and the fact that like these are just 2 18-year-old girls and they just get called over to go be assistant teachers at this boarding school kind of at the drop of a hat. And I was like, are they not doing anything else? It's February. Like what are they? Again, that whole like, is Nancy in college or is she not? Like, what is that about? So I swear that it is February. Yes, yeah, okay, here it is. It is on page 4. Bess says, because they're talking about going bike riding, Bess says doubtfully, I don't know, George, the weather, this sounds pretty risky for February. The weather might suddenly turn.
Okay, never
mind.
So
it is February.
For some reason, I thought that they referenced like the first snow or something. And I was like, that seems, February seems late for a first snow. Yeah. When they're supposed to be, this is actually supposed to be set like near River Heights too, isn't it?
That's another thing.
Upstate New York.
Right. It is literally like in River Heights, or it's at least close enough for Nancy to be able to bike from her home to the school, which is kind of wild. And I definitely want to talk about that later because I don't know that, honestly, I don't know that that was the best choice because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because she's going undercover at this school. And I'm like, this is River Heights. Surely people going to this school would know who Nancy Drew is if they live in River Heights, you know? But anyway, I digress. So, yeah. So February, not
Yes.
November. That's another difference here. But what were we talking? 3 words. 3 words.
Yes,
Goodness
maybe just like
gracious.
weather. I don't know.
I think snow. I think
Snow.
snow makes sense to me because
I
we
like
talk
it.
about the snow all throughout. It's like the snow is there and then the snow keeps snowing. And then finally
Mhm.
the snow is like too much and it's a problem.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I like cats, clicks, and snow.
Perfect.
Okay.
Do you want to start the summary?
Sure. Okay. So, chapter 1, Bess and George are at Nancy's house the morning after a sleepover. I guess they just all decided to stay over at Nancy's house. They are making breakfast when Bess hears a spooky noise outside, and she actually says that it sounds like a ghost being killed, which George kind of teases her about because, of course, ghosts are dead. They can't die again. But Beth says that she's just kind of like thinking this. She's kind of freaked out because she's been reading Edgar Allan Poe, which is really interesting. I feel like for Bess that
Mhm.
is kind of how we start this book. Is Bess talking about she's freaked out by reading spooky stories? Seems a little bit out of character. Feel like Bess would not be spending her time reading scary stories,
Mm-mm.
considering how kind of fearful she tends to be. But interesting. Who says Bess can't have layers, you know?
Of course.
But the noise, of course, just turns out to be some stray cats fighting, and it's fine. Anyway, Nancy then gets a call from a friend of Carson, who is the headmistress of a nearby boarding school called Waverly Academy for girls. Her name is Mrs. Sarah Cook, and she tells Nancy that she needs her help, and basically tells her, she doesn't even ask her to like get her tail over to the school in like 30 minutes so that she can talk to her about this. George and Nancy were actually just about to go on a bike ride, and Bess, of course, being not interested in this bike ride, is going to be headed home. So instead, Nancy and George just ride their bikes over to the school. It is apparently a beautiful campus. There's like this main stone building, which I think they call just Tower, not
Mm-hmm.
the Tower, just
Tower.
Tower.
Mm-hmm.
They do definitely have interesting building names.
Yes.
This school, which I noticed. Tower is actually quite tame for I think what the rest of them are called. I don't even
Right.
remember off the top of my head, but
Einstein's the science
yes,
building.
Einstein. I think the art building is called Picasso.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit goofy. But so there's this old building, apparently it was built around 1890. It's covered with ivy. It has beautiful Gothic windows. Basically, if you've played Warnings at Waverly Academy, I'm sure that it looks just like her interactive's rendition. Once inside, they are about to head up to the headmistress's office when they hear a girl crying from behind a nearby closet door. So they go over and knock. They're like asking her if she's okay, but she won't respond. She won't answer any of their questions. And so they're kind of concerned about her. They're worried if she might be injured or something. And so they try to open the door. It's unlocked and they pull it open. And inside is a dark haired girl with a nose piercing. And she kind of looks up at them, startled that they've opened the door. And then she runs out and runs away before they can stop her. So Nancy and George then go up to Mrs. Cook's office, and she explains to Nancy and George that Waverly Academy has been dealing with some recent issues, but she won't really elaborate on exactly what these issues are until Nancy and George agree to take the case. I guess she's just super concerned about privacy and like word getting out about this, but I don't know why she won't tell Nancy right off the bat, but whatever. All she'll say is that she's sure that Nancy is the right person for this job. Of course, she knows of Nancy because of Carson. And that they would be posing as teaching assistants. So George and Nancy would be posing as teaching assistants while they investigate these goings on. And just as they are discussing this, the door to Mrs. Cook's office opens, and the dark haired girl who was crying earlier is there. She holds out a piece of paper to the headmistress and says, "It's the black cat, Mrs. Cook. I've been cursed."
Yay.
So Mrs. Cook introduces the girl named Sindhu Banerjee to Nancy and Bess, and at Mrs. Cook's urging, Sindhu explains what happened. Sindhu is a little bit shy and unpopular, even though she really excels in academics, but she really wants to be popular though, and so she bought this CD of apparently this new cool band for this popular girl for her birthday, hoping that she could give it to her and be accepted by this popular group, right? A click, right?
Yeah.
Classic click dynamics. And so she goes to give her this CD, but then when the girl opens it, inside she sees it's actually the CD of like this old uncool band called the Black Cats, which is like such a crazy coincidence in my opinion, but
Or
it's
is it?
apparently, yeah, so uncool that like this makes the popular girl and her friends like laugh at Sindhu, and so Sindhu ran away in tears, and that's why she was crying in the closet. But then after Nancy and George found her in the closet, she ran upstairs to her room, and that is where she found the Black Cat curse note on her dresser. Mrs. Cook sends Sindhu back to class, and now that Nancy and George know this story, Mrs. Cook explains the whole situation. It started yesterday. Apparently, the captain of the basketball team, Lucy Slingoff, I don't know, was about to compete in a game against a rival school, but when she went into the locker room to change, she found her lucky basketball shoes dipped in tar, and then sitting right beside them was a Black Cat curse note. Then this morning, Eliza McBride, who is the lead in the school play playing Guinevere, had her long blonde hair cut off in the middle of the night while she was sleeping by someone. And then she woke up and she found all her hair at the bottom of her bed with another Black Cat note, which is horrifying.
They keep calling this a prank. They call everything that the Black
Yes.
Cat does a prank, even
This
though
is
some of them
assault.
are attempted murder. This is assault.
This is assault.
This is assault. And then later we're going to treat Eliza like it's just this silly thing that she's freaking out about. Justice for Eliza.
Justice for Eliza. I cannot imagine that would be so horrifying to wake up. Do you remember in Veronica Mars?
This is exactly what it reminded me of. I was about to say the exact same thing. Oh my gosh. It's assault.
Listen,
It's assault.
I know that I compare everything to Veronica Mars because I love Veronica Mars. But in Veronica Mars, there's a whole plot line where sorry, this is a spoiler. I'm not going to spoil all of it, but there's a plot line in season 3 where there is a rapist who's going around raping girls and shaving their heads off while they're unconscious after they've been drugged. And this is exactly what this reminded me of. I was like, it was because the hair like got delivered to one of the girls like post her like assault, and I don't think it actually turned out to be her hair. It turned out to be the hair of another victim, which is almost even more horrifying. But just like imagining like getting your hair delivered to you after someone removed it from your head, like
sinister.
Yes. Anyway, so Eliza is apparently kind of a dramatic person. She's of course in the play, so she, likes drama or whatever. She has now spread this story all around the school. And Mrs. Cook takes great exception to this, and she's really annoyed at Eliza for doing this. But I'm like, I'm sorry. If my hair was cut off in the middle of the night by someone, you best believe I'm telling every single person I know about that.
This is way worse than a CD being swapped out. I'm sorry.
I cannot handle it. Anyway. So now that this story has been spread around school, that's what's prompted Mrs. Cook to try to reach out to Nancy to get Nancy to investigate. And Sindhu's note will have been the third incident, the third Black Cat curse that has occurred. Mrs. Cook shows Nancy all of these notes that the students have received, and Nancy compares them. They are all typed on plain white computer paper saying, "The Black Cat curses you until the day you die," which is hilariously dramatic, and I love that so much. And then above that message is a stamp of like a scary looking black cat, which actually looks familiar to Nancy somehow, but she can't quite place it. So we'll remember that. Anyway, obviously Nancy agrees to help solve this mystery, and she and George head off to the classrooms where they will be assistant teaching. Nancy will be assisting Miss Angela Friedlander in English, and George will, of course, be helping the sports teacher because she's George and
Of
she's
course.
got her special interest is sports. So when Nancy gets to the building where the English class is, she hears screams from behind the classroom door, and then the door opens and out runs an angry black cat, looking like it's about to attack Nancy. So scary.
Yes.
Sorry, as the owner of two black cats who are, of course, not aggressive. I do know aggressive cats exist, but it's just so funny to me to think of like Nancy being freaked out by like a scary cat running out of the classroom.
Oh, this is a little bit overdramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nancy even like throws herself out of the way as the cat runs past just so that it like doesn't get too close to her. The cat ends up running out of the building, and then the teacher who she's assigned to help, Miss Friedlander, comes out of the classroom after the cat. Nancy introduces herself to Miss Friedlander, and we see that she has been actually scratched by the cat. So she helps her. They go to the bathroom and they wash it up or whatever. While they're doing this, Miss Friedlander explains that she was actually just about to administer a test on Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Black Cat.
Oh.
Another crazy coincidence. She went to her desk drawer to take the exam out, and when she did, the cat jumps out of the desk drawer. This black cat is actually well known to the students on campus. His name is Catastrophe, or Tassie for short. I love this. It's adorable. It's a stray cat, but we're pretty sure it's like a feral cat, so not super socialized and gets pretty, I guess, anxious and aggressive when any students try to come around it. Really not friendly at all. Nobody can really get this cat to be nice, I guess. The only real explanation for Tassie being in this drawer in the first place is that maybe he fell asleep in there and maybe somebody shut it without realizing he was in there. That seems a little bit strange. And Nancy's like, are we even sure that this was an accident? Because, these black cat notes, black cat. Yeah. And so they go over. She's like, all right, Miss Friedlander, let's go over to your desk and like look around for any other clues. And sure enough, there is a black cat note inside the drawer. Unfortunately, all the students in the classroom, though, have now overheard all of this and they start freaking out a little bit. So Miss Friedlander just cancels class for the rest of the day. After this, Nancy goes to find George and they head back to her house for some lunch. And when they get their bikes, this is our scene on the cover here. Nancy finds a black cat note has been left for her on her bike. It's identical to the other ones that we have seen, except for at the bottom, it says, P.S. Back off, Nancy Drew, or the black cat will curse you double.
Oh, saucy.
We don't get this in the game. In the game, it's just time's up, isn't it? Or you've been warned or something. There's two different things that they say, depending on if it's the first or the second note.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm because we see a number of black cat notes. We don't just see Nancy's. We also see a couple of the other girls as well. So I can't remember specifically what Nancy's say,
But yeah, it's never like you're cursed until the day you die, back off, all this kind of stuff. Oh, it's so good. So, because obviously we know whenever somebody gets these notes, it's accompanied either like at the same time or directly after some attempt at sabotage, Nancy is now on her guard. She doesn't notice anything, like her bike looks fine, everything seems fine, so we're okay, but we need to stay alert, obviously. So we go back to the Drew home, and actually Bess comes over for lunch, and Nancy asks, like, hey, can you bring your Edgar Allan Poe book when you come for lunch? So this is where Nancy recognizes this cat image from, the one that's actually on the notes. Bess has this, like, super old book of Edgar Allan Poe stories, and on the cover is the exact same black cat, which it looks like somebody made a stamp out of, except on their stamp, they also add little, like, vampire teeth on the cat. It's so funny. So it looks exactly identical except for the little vampire teeth. And this is actually, Nancy notices that this particular version of the book is not the same book that the students in Mrs. Friedlander's class have. This seems like a much older copy, perhaps. So now they need to try to narrow it down and see, like, okay, who has a copy of this exact printing of this book with the same cover and everything. So Nancy decides that they needed to do a search and kind of figure out who either has that book or happens to have a stamp with that image of it. So Nancy and George go back to the school, and Mrs. Cook has called an emergency assembly. Now that the whole school knows about the black cat, they have to pretty much tell everybody what's going on. So she announces to everyone that the school is safe and that they're working hard to find the responsible party. And she asks everyone to kind of be on the lookout for any strange behavior. Directly after this, she does introduce Nancy and George to everyone as assistant teachers.
Can we talk about this, though?
Yes.
Because this is the thing that I have the most issue with. Like, I think it's totally fine that, like, okay, Nancy, you come to the school, you'll pose as an assistant teacher in this position or whatever while you secretly investigate. But she announces to everyone at assembly, like, Nancy Drew's here, by the way. She's
Real
in
name.
River Heights. Real name. She's in River Heights. I understand how, like, Nancy's not here under an assumed name because it is River Heights and people would recognize her, so it would be like really awkward. But like, you're telling me that these girls have not seen a single news story with Nancy in it? Like, this book came out in 2001? 2001? The internet existed.
Yeah.
Like, someone could have Googled Nancy, or I guess it was probably more like Ask Jinx or whatever.
Probably.
This time. Like, we could have found out who Nancy Drew is. Like, so the moment you, like, announce her at assembly, it's like, come on. Kind of blew her cover there. Like, also, I mean, I guess it is probably true that at this point the Black Cat already knows that Nancy Drew is there investigating because she gave Nancy a curse note, but it's like, still, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, the game even tries to fix this as well, because not only is it set outside of River Heights, really far away from River Heights, she also goes by a fake name the entire game as well. She's Becca Sawyer.
Becca Sawyer, right. That makes so much more sense to me.
It does, yes. Anyway. Thank you, Her Interactive, for resolving that for us. But anyway, they get introduced as teachers, and then Nancy heads back to Mrs. Friedlander's class afterwards. And here we have some drama. They're covering the Jungle Book in class today, and a student in the class, Francesca, did not do the reading. Her excuse is that the panther was too scary with all the other black cat stuff happening, and so it was just like too much for her to read it right now. But then another girl, Eliza, the girl who, remember, had her hair cut off, accuses Francesca of lying. She says Francesca is not afraid of cats. In fact, she is the only person who Catastrophe or Tassie will allow to touch him. Apparently she really likes cats and has gotten Catastrophe to warm up to her. And in fact, Eliza even accuses Francesca. She's like, you are the one who put Tassie in Miss Friedlander's desk, and therefore you must be the black cat. So dramatic. And so after class, Nancy decides to go ask Miss Cook about these two students. The secretary, who I don't even remember his name at this point, our one male character.
Alvarez or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But the secretary tells Nancy, oh, Miss Cook is not in her office at the moment. And so Nancy just goes and sits with George to wait. And then while she's waiting, she ends up getting a note that Miss Cook has returned and says that Nancy needs to see her in her office immediately. So Nancy gets in the elevator to go on up to her office because it's weird. The office is the only thing on the entire floor, so that when the elevator goes up, it just opens directly into her office. So she goes up in the elevator, and then just as she's about to reach the floor for Miss Cook's office, the lights go off and the elevator gets stuck. Love this trope. We love an elevator getting stuck.
Yeah, if there's an elevator, Nancy will get stuck in it.
Yes. Chekhov's elevator.
Yep.
So, of course, we try to push the emergency button. Nothing happens. And then we start to hear a sawing noise above us.
Oh, this is horrifying.
Like someone's trying to cut the elevator cable.
Oh my God.
So Nancy starts screaming for help. And finally, Miss Cook comes to her rescue. The reason that the elevator was stopped is because someone opened the door from Mrs. Cook's office. So somehow somebody took the elevator up, was waiting in the office, and then as soon as they heard Nancy start to come up on the elevator, they just opened the door because I guess it's some sort of safety feature. It will automatically stop the elevator. And so when Miss Cook came back to her office, because she wasn't actually in her office at the time, she sees or something was like up with the elevator. So she takes the stairs, right? And then when she gets there,
Yeah.
she sees that the elevator door is just standing right open. Oh, and then also like a window in the office is open and like dangling, a rope is like dangling out of it. So it looks like obviously the saboteur was able to escape not by just using the stairs, but by taking a rope out the
Right.
window. So that's terrifying, right? Because this person was definitely sawing at the elevator cable and could have killed Nancy really easily by doing that. This is attempted murder,
Yep.
not a prank. We
Nope.
call it a prank.
Mm-hmm.
This would have instantly killed her.
Also,
No question about that.
premeditated because they sent a note to lure
Mhm.
Nancy here to kill her. So this
Mhm.
is what, murder in the first degree, I believe. Whatever
I have no
whatever those
idea
are.
how you
Yeah.
qualify for that.
Hold on. I need to Google this. I need to know. Yeah. First degree is premeditated murder. Second
Mhm.
degree is like reckless murder. Or usually within the course of a felony, like a robbery or a burglary or whatever. But yeah. It's first degree murder.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, obviously it seems like somebody did this because they know that Nancy is investigating now.
Yep.
So, yeah, we need to look out a little bit better, Nancy. I know you said you were going to be on the on high alert, but this does not feel like that. So Miss Cook says, "All right, guys, time to call the police," because she hadn't up until now. Whatever, but Nancy tells her not to because she thinks that the police will just scare the culprit into hiding, and then they won't be able to catch this person.
Okay. It doesn't feel great because it's like we are supposed to be like, responsible for all of these students, and the person who has called themselves the Black Cat clearly just made an attempt on your life, Nancy. So doesn't seem like they would feel too bad about putting other people's lives at risk or possibly
Mm-mm.
murdering them. So I don't know. I think as an adult, in this situation, you might need to be like, yeah, actually, I am going to call the police because I'm worried about my students' safety.
Like the parents must have been so
Right.
furious.
Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine not being informed about this as a parent? Like, because like this is a boarding school. Like, your children aren't like, this is not day school. They don't get to go home at the end of the
Mhm.
day. They're fully away from you. They're, sleeping on campus. So it's like, you don't have any access to them or to like know about this situation. So you would think in that kind of setup, you would want to know everything
Mhm.
about the goings on
Mhm.
day in, day out so that you can like, be a good parent and know what your child is up
Mhm.
to. And the fact that like you have this negligent headmistress who's letting an 18-year-old tell her what to do about the safety of her students. Oh, I would sue so fast. I
Mm.
would pull my child out of that school so fast.
These are minors. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's like this everywhere. I know at least here where I live, the parents have to sign something
Mhm.
when the children go off to a type of school like this saying that, like, yeah, you're their legal guardian now.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is just ridiculous. And then for her to start off with, like, Nancy, you can't call the police.
Yes.
And she doesn't call the police in the first place. She calls Nancy.
Nancy.
And it's like, Nancy, you can't tell anyone, and you certainly can't call the police. But now that we do want to call the police, Nancy's like, no, 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 it's fine that they tried to kill me.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, whatever. So she convinces Mrs. Cook not to call the police, and then they talk more about our suspects here. Eliza and Francesca have both had a lot of accusations thrown around about them, and Miss Cook says that she actually suspects Eliza more than Francesca, though it is true what Eliza said about Catastrophe that Francesca is the only person that he'll let hold him. So it is possible that she could have been the only person who he would have let her put in the drawer. Apparently, though, Eliza hates Waverly and doesn't like being a student here. And Miss Cook says that she's so dramatic and mischievous that she could easily see Eliza trying to be the one to like bring the whole school down. I think Nancy even says something like, "Well, why doesn't she just try to get kicked out or something?"
Yeah.
And Mrs. Cook is like, "No, she's so dramatic. She won't be happy unless the school closes down entirely. Like it wouldn't be enough for her to just leave." I'm like, "Okay, well that's a stretch, but sure." We do also ask her about the Poe book thing, and she says, yeah, absolutely not. We do not have a copy of a Poe book like that. It's not on campus. We don't have any like classes assigned to read it, so it couldn't be here. And then she does give Nancy permission to search the girls' room. I think we even get like a master key. And then, so Nancy wants to look for this book, obviously, because that would be a pretty strong indicator of who our culprit could be. But tonight is actually the opening night of the school play, and it's now evening time. So Nancy, Bess, and George all attend to watch Eliza, who, again, is the lead of the play. In the audience, right as the lights start to go down, Nancy realizes that there is a girl in the crowd with auburn hair, and she's seated like directly to the left of Nancy, but she's wearing like 50s style eyeglasses.
Cat eye glasses.
Yeah, like the little cat eye shaped, but not just the little cat eye shape, the little,
the cat eye on the cat glasses.
The cat eye
cat
on it has a little cat shape on the corners of it. So
this is crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy because Eliza comes out on stage, sees this girl in the audience, points at her, screams, and then just passes out on stage.
Oh my god. Yeah, so Eliza faints and the drama teacher comes on stage and like puts the show on hold or whatever. Eliza gets revived and then carried backstage. So Nancy gets up and goes to talk to her. Turns out, yes, she was just so frightened by the glasses that she saw on this girl in the audience. And so she fainted. Eliza says that this girl wearing them, Lila Van Voorhees, we learn her name is, did this on purpose, or Eliza thinks that she did this on purpose because Eliza got the part in the play and Lila wanted the part but didn't get it. So Eliza thinks this is revenge. But Lila comes backstage actually to apologize to Eliza for scaring her and explains that she definitely didn't do this on purpose. But when she got out of the shower, her usual glasses were missing and these black cat glasses were sitting there in her place. And Lila is pretty much blind without her glasses, and even though these aren't her prescription, wearing them is the only way she'd be able to like see anything. So she had to put them on. But then Lila looks in her purse literally right then and finds an envelope with her name on it. She has also been sent a black cat curse note. So the rest of the play ends up restarting. Eliza is fine. She goes back on stage. But towards the end of the play, Nancy realizes she's not learning anything about the case by sitting here watching Eliza on stage. She's playing another character. It's, there's no clues here. Mm-hmm. So she decides that instead she wants to take this opportunity to search Eliza's room while she's busy with the play. So she sneaks off alone to Eliza's dorm room and starts searching. She ends up finding a bucket of tar in the back of her closet, actually. And obviously the first girl who got the black cat note, her basketball shoes were covered in tar. So this doesn't look good for Eliza. Mm-hmm. But then just as she's made this discovery, she hears the door handle to the room rattle. Turns out it's just Bess. She's coming to warn her that the play is over, and so they better leave quickly. So they do, and on their way home, Bess also tells Nancy and George that during intermission, she overheard that Eliza actually wanted to cut her hair and was annoyed with her drama teacher for making her wait until after the play to cut it because the character of Guinevere would have long hair, right? So maybe getting her hair cut wasn't really a curse after all. Maybe if Eliza is the black cat, she cut her own hair to make it look like she'd been cursed. Maybe. Interesting theory. We need to talk about this later too. But if Eliza was behind all of this, how did she get Catastrophe into the drawer? Because again, Eliza can't touch Catastrophe. The next morning, they come back to campus, or Nancy and George come back to campus, and they run into a girl crying and shouting that she's been cursed. This is Kalisha Jones. She is, and she tells Nancy, George, and Mrs. Cook once they get to her office that her senior thesis that she's been working on for months was deleted from her computer, and her backup disk was stolen. Mrs. Cook assures Kalisha that this will not affect her grade, but of course, Kalisha is still just devastated because months of her work is just gone, right? But it really, really sucks. So Mrs. Cook sends Kalisha back to class, and Nancy tells Mrs. Cook about finding the tar in Eliza's closet last night. But she does tell Mrs. Cook to kind of hold off on confronting Eliza about this because really she wants more evidence before any accusations start flying, and things still aren't quite really adding up. Mrs. Cook says that she has even more reason to suspect Eliza, though, because Eliza and Lila are both rivals for control of a quote unquote cool group of seniors. So, again, more cliquishness happening, and they're definitely not friends. So, Eliza would have reason to target Lila. I guess this it's just wild. So, Mrs. Cook thinks, I guess, that Eliza stole Lila's glasses, gave her the black cat glasses, left the note, and then saw them and fainted on stage, all to get back at Lila somehow. I don't know how this does anything to Lila at all, but
No.
okay. But Mrs. Cook agrees not to do anything yet and lets Nancy continue her investigation. Nancy then decides to go sneak into Francesca's room to see if maybe she can find anything in there, because remember, Francesca was also accused by Eliza of being the Black Cat. And inside, she does find a copy of that old Poe book that Bess had, the book that has the illustration that the stamp must have been made from that's on the Black Cat notes. The page with the Black Cat illustration is even dog-eared. So it definitely seems like Francesca must know something more about this Black Cat business if she has a copy of that book with that page marked. So, interesting. Anyway, Nancy now has to go to Miss Friedlander's class. Unfortunately, though, when she gets there, Miss Friedlander has not arrived. It's been like 5 minutes since, I guess, class started. So she and the students wait a little bit to see if Miss Friedlander is going to show up, but she never shows. So Nancy calls Mrs. Cook and they head to Miss Friedlander's on-campus apartment to look for her. Because, of course, remember, Miss Friedlander got a Black Cat curse note. So we are worried that something has happened to Miss Friedlander. They knock on the door and there is no answer. So Miss Friedlander opens it with her master key. And inside it looks like there's been a struggle. Furniture is like strewn about. They go into her bedroom and on the dresser, they find an envelope. But inside is not a curse note. It is a ransom note. It is addressed to Miss Friedlander's parents demanding $5 million or they will never see their daughter again. Miss Friedlander has been kidnapped by the Black Cat.
Side note, is it not really weird that not only do they have all their employees living on campus, but that the administrators can just let themselves into their homes at any time? That seems like some sort of employment violation. I understand that there was like extenuating circumstances that they were concerned about her life or whatever, but like this, I would not be okay with it if my boss just walked into my house anytime she wanted to because I wasn't at work or something.
For real.
Anyway,
I don't think all the teachers live on campus. I don't
think it's a requirement, but
no. I do think, she specifically does because she's not local. She's like from out of state, which we'll learn in a little bit. But
can't you just get an apartment in River Heights though? Like, why do you have to live on campus? It seems weird to have faculty housing at all. Like, I get some colleges might have like, a faculty in residence or something like that, but this is different and weird. I don't know.
Well, I think there is something about boarding schools specifically where it's more likely for teachers or staff to reside on campus because someone has to be there to provide supervision to the girls overnight, right?
But that's what RAs are for.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. But no, it's definitely like your employer should not be able to go into your apartment.
Yeah. Just waltz into your bedroom when they feel like it.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so ransom note. And they want the money put in this cat urn, go figure, that is in a nearby cemetery by 5 p.m. tomorrow. The note is signed by the Black Cat. The problem with this is that Miss Friedlander's parents have both passed away, and Miss Friedlander herself certainly is not wealthy. So there's no way that this ransom demand can be met, right? The only option really is to catch the black cat before then to ensure Miss Friedlander's safety.
Oh my gosh.
This
Oh
is so
my gosh.
stressful. Also, the school is closing for the 4-day winter break tomorrow at noon. So pretty much everybody's going to be gone after that. So we have a scary, quickly approaching deadline.
We love a deadline.
I
in a
know, we love a
mystery.
deadline. At this point, they do decide to call the police. So thank God. But Nancy decides that once they get there, Nancy decides she's not going to tell them about all of the leads that she has and who she actually suspects as being the black cat. Again, because she doesn't want the police to follow her suspects and freak them out to the point where they don't do the bad things. So she can't catch them. Like, oh, Nancy. Anyway, after covering a class for Miss Friedlander, Nancy and George decide to spend the lunch period gathering some background information on all their suspects and victims, which is Lucy, Sindhu, Eliza, Lila, Francesca, and Kalisha. They split up and Nancy runs into Francesca. Nancy subtly asks her if maybe she did put Catastrophe in the drawer, like not with the note or anything. She's not accusing her of being the black cat, just like maybe she thought the drawer was a nice cozy spot for Catastrophe to sleep or something. And Francesca gets super angry at this idea. She says that she would never do that to the poor kitty. The drawer would have been cramped and scary, would have freaked the cat out. Also Francesca hates Miss Friedlander, so she said she'd never put the cat anywhere near that woman, which I just thought was hilarious. And then Francesca hurries off in a rush. Nancy finds Eliza in the art studio, and not wanting to blow her cover, Nancy tells Eliza that the police found tar in her closet. Not Nancy didn't find the tar, the police found the tar in her closet and want to know, why it's there because of Lucy's tar-covered sneakers. And Eliza says she has no idea why it was there. She's going to sue the police for slander. She doesn't know anything about it. Someone must have planted it there, blah, blah, blah. Gets very angry. And then she runs off to gym, which is her next class. Nancy follows her all the way to the gym and is watching her at practice. And she sees that a girl named Rosie Singh accidentally knocks Eliza over while making a basket. And Eliza accuses her this time of being the black cat. So now she's accused Francesca and Rosie. Anybody else? Oh, and Lila.
Yep.
Of being the black cat. And she says that the reason for this is because Miss Friedlander accused Rosie of cheating and that Rosie wanted revenge against Miss Friedlander.
So the coach actually gives Eliza detention for this accusation, but Nancy still goes after Rosie anyway to try to talk to her about this. Rosie says that it's true. Yeah, Miss Friedlander did accuse her of cheating, and Rosie does not like Miss Friedlander, but she would never try to kidnap her.
Right. That's like a normal
Yeah. Besides, this cheating argument only happened yesterday, which is way after the Black Cat note started happening, and certainly after the Black Cat note was delivered to Mrs. Friedlander. But then Nancy goes to talk to Kalisha, who is hanging out outside the gym, and she tells her that she actually suspects Rosie over Eliza any day. Rosie is also a senior and another contender for valedictorian against her. And so Rosie would really benefit from deleting Kalisha's paper because then maybe she would be getting better grades than her, right? Also, Kalisha tells us that she heard that Rosie's family is having money problems and owes the school so much that it might even stop her from graduating. So, $5 million would really go a long way with fixing that problem. Nancy and George say goodbye to Kalisha at this point, and then they see Rosie sneaking out of the back door of the gym. So they decide to follow her. And then Kalisha runs right back up to them and is like, "Oh, Miss Cook wants to speak to you because Lila Van Voorhees is missing."
At this point, I was like, Kalisha, that is so sus.
Yeah.
It's like, I strongly suspected Kalisha after this. I was like, you just left and then you run back up immediately. Did you even have time to go talk to anybody else after this happened? But
yeah,
whatever.
seriously. Oh, yeah. So they go over to Mrs. Cook's office, who is already talking to the police about this. Apparently, Lila was last seen in her math class, which was right before lunch. And then she was not at lunch. And then she missed her history class right after that. Then Miss Cook received a similar ransom demand for $5 million for Lila via email. It repeated the order to put the money in the cat urn at the cemetery. And then if they get the money, then Lila and Miss Friedlander will be returned. So I guess it's still only $5 million. It's
Yeah.
not a total of 10 for both of them.
Yeah.
Bad kidnappers, I guess. But so the cops start searching for both Lila and Miss Friedlander, and Nancy decides that she is going to go search the rooms a little bit more. So she gets the master key from Mrs. Cook. But right now is actually the start of their afternoon free time. So the suspects could all be going off and doing, their own thing right now. Obviously, they don't have a certain time that they have to be anywhere. So if one of these girls is going to go check on their kidnappees and like bring them food or whatever, now would be the time that they're going to do that. So she and George decide to split up and go like tail the suspects to see what each of them might be up to. So Nancy runs off on a path that runs parallel to the woods. And when she does, she hears somebody laughing, like a girl laughing, and the sound is getting closer and closer. So she hides a little bit, and then she sees Rosie coming out of the woods with her gym bag. She follows her, and she goes all the way to the basement of Tower and then up into the kitchen. So Nancy's like kind of sneaking behind her this entire time, trying to like periodically hide. And then she gets up to like the stairway to the kitchens. And like right as she's about to like go inside the building, Rosie's already gone in, but right as Nancy's about to go inside, someone from behind slips a plastic bag over her head, drags her over to the walk-in freezer, and shuts her inside. Not only that, but the door is locked. So whoever shut her in here must have like wedged it shut somehow. And she bangs on the door, but nobody hears her. And this is actually really
I
clever.
know.
She has this idea. She's like, well, if nobody can hear me, and she can hear people out there as well. So she's like,
It's like a busy kitchen. It's like right before dinner time. So there's a
Mhm.
ton of people in there like cooking. I'm like, how is nobody
how do you not hear her?
her?
So she has this brilliant idea. There's plenty of milk in this freezer with her, or this refrigerator, or whatever it is. And so she is barely able to like peel up that little like rubber thing at the bottom of the door, the like thing that seals off the air. She peels that up a little bit, opens the milk, and just kind of pours it out the hole so that the milk kind of spills out into the rest of the kitchen. And then the workers outside are like, oh my gosh, where's all that milk coming from?
Right.
And so they open up the freezer door, and Nancy's just in there freezing. But it works. And so she gets rescued, and the guy who opens the door is like, oh, sorry, I had my headphones in. That's
Right.
why I didn't hear you.
But
Whatever.
there was a chair wedged under the refrigerator door handle.
That's not out of place to you?
He literally says, oh, I did think it was kind of weird that there was a chair stuck here.
You wouldn't.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I question that.
Straight to
that
jail.
was me, but
I was like, well, you did it then. Like, you put me in here.
seems a little strange.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, this is actually perfect timing because dinner is right now just about to start. So she runs into the dining room, and Rosie like sees her as soon as she comes in, because Rosie's still just in the dining room. I guess they're like literally about to have this formal sit down dinner for all the students. But when Rosie sees her, she doesn't like react to Nancy. She's not like surprised to see her or anything like that. So was she the one that shoved her in the freezer? I mean, the assailant was like behind her, and Rosie had already gone ahead of her. So unless she'd like doubled back somehow, it doesn't seem like it was her, or unless she had like a second person or something. Very strange. But then she goes to find George, and George is actually in the common room with Bess. And George reports that she had been watching Lucy and Eliza play cards all afternoon, but otherwise, like, nothing else happened. She's like, your thing sounds actually more entertaining because I was so bored. I would have rather been locked in the freezer. But then Bess showed up because she got really worried that Nancy and George still weren't home yet that evening. And also, she just wanted to know how everything was going. So she decided to come for dinner. This is actually excellent news to Nancy because she's like, great, one more person to help us tail everyone. And so they have dinner, and then afterwards, Nancy is going to follow Rosie, Bess is going to follow Francesca, and then George is going to follow Eliza. So Rosie heads to the science lab to do some more work with Kalisha, which is interesting because I thought that Kalisha even said that she didn't really like Rosie, and they're like academic rivals and both trying to get the valedictorian role or whatever. So that's
I thought for sure after reading this, I was like, this is the secret society. All of the girls are in on it together.
Yes.
Clearly they are working together.
So good. Yes. I love it. But then afterwards, Rosie heads back to her room, and Nancy is like watching her through the window. And first of all, creepy Nancy, but she turns on her computer and opens her gym bag, and she starts like rummaging around in the bag, about to pull something out. But then she just stops abruptly and then just leaves the room. And Nancy's like, oh, well, my perfect chance now. She really wants to know what's in this bag because apparently it was very interesting to Rosie. So I guess she's just like sitting here waiting for her to come back so she can see what she was about to pull out. But then she hears a scream in the distance, and it sounds an awful lot like Bess.
Oh. So Nancy takes off running, and she follows the sound all the way into the woods, and she comes upon Francesca coming out of like a little shed that's out here. Francesca claims that she was just looking for Tassie, and is actually a little bit distressed because Tassie is not coming when she calls him, which normally he would do. She also, because she feeds him out here. That's why. Nancy looks around a little bit more, but she can't find Bess. And so she takes Francesca to Mrs. Cook's office where Mrs. Cook and the police are. The police and Mrs. Cook pretty much just grill Francesca because obviously she is exhibiting some very suspicious behavior. And she was somewhere that she shouldn't have been because it's like 10 p.m. and she was in the woods, right? Francesca claims that she was in the library before, but then when Mrs. Cook starts to like call the librarian to like check her story, Francesca's like, no, I mean, I was going to the library. So she's like changing her story. It's still very suspicious. But she does eventually confess to having put the tar in Eliza's closet, but she says she's not responsible for any of the black cat notes or the kidnapping. She just wanted to get Eliza in trouble because Eliza accused her of being the black cat.
I love all this drama, this petty, clicky stuff. Just like, of course you did that. Of course you did.
Well, and it just makes the story and like the mystery so confusing and so hard to figure out. Like, I'm like, okay, wait, so we have to disregard that. So what else does that mean we have to disregard about Eliza? And like, so is Eliza not our lead suspect anymore? But is also not Francesca because Francesca says she didn't do it, but or did she? It's just so confusing. But yeah, but this obviously doesn't explain the copy of the Black Cat book in Francesca's room or why Francesca was in the woods when Nancy heard Bess scream. The police promised to search for Bess as well as Lila, as well as Miss Friedlander. Our missing people are really stacking up now. And so Nancy goes to find George and they go home for the night.
Which how?
Yeah, did this make you mad too?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so we're not going to trust the police with any of the information that we have about who we think the black cat is. But our best friend goes missing and we're like, nah, I'm sure the police got it. I'm sure they're handling it.
I know her life's in danger, but I'm really sleepy, so I gotta go. What?
Wait, do you remember in the final scene, which I know this is a different series, but in the final scene, Nancy is so distraught at Bess being gone that she's running herself ragged, not sleeping.
People have to force her to leave for a few hours to get some rest.
People have to force her to leave to go sleep. What's happening here?
And she's like, well, that's all we could possibly do. Time to go, George.
It's 10 p.m. It's not even midnight. It's not like it's that late. It's like a normal, acceptable bedtime that they decide to leave. I can't with this. I can't with this. Anyway, the next day, there is still no sign of Bess, and so Nancy wants to go search some dorm rooms, I guess. But remember, this is the last day before the break, and the students leave at noon. So we are really running out of time here to find everyone. Lila and Rosie's rooms are across from each other, so she and George go over there. George goes into Rosie's room, and Nancy goes into Lila's. Nancy ends up finding a letter from Lila's father. His name is Edgar Van Voorhees. But as soon as she picks it up off the desk where she saw it, a black cloaked figure in a cat mask appears in the doorway to the room. It grabs her arm, and Nancy notices that the hands are they have gloves on, and the gloves have masonry nails attached to them. Like nails, so it's it's like a spiky glove. Like if you punch someone with that, you could kill them. And the figure holds one of those gloved hands up to Nancy's face and said that Nancy better put down the letter or they'll rip her to shreds.
This should have been in the game.
I
I needed the culprit to actually have the black cat disguise on with the nail.
It's scary.
Nails.
Super scary. I'm also the kind of cat mask I'm picturing is a full face.
Oh, of course.
Cat mask, and those are so horrifying because they fully disguise the features. You know what I mean? Feels very Death Eater. But of course, Nancy is forced to drop the letter, and so she does. And then the figure throws her out of the room into the hallway and locks Nancy out of the room. Nancy quickly picks the lock on the door, but it is not fast enough because as soon as she gets back into the room, the figure and the letter are gone and the window is open. So Nancy looks out the window, and a nearby tree limb is swinging on one of the trees that line the woods. Someone has just brushed up against that. And so Nancy jumps out the window, takes off, and runs into the woods after this person. She comes up to the shed, but there's no one there, so it seems like she's lost them. She comes back to the dorm room. She tells George what happened, and George tells her that she actually found something in Rosie's room while she was searching. She found an essay written by a student at the nearby boys' school, and she saw a note on Rosie's calendar that says, "Buy it from CK," which are the initials of the boy's name on the essay. So it looks like Rosie bought this essay from the boy at the boys' school. So Rosie is cheating. But then it's even more... Okay, Nancy says that... I don't know that I believe this, but Nancy says that it's more likely then that Rosie's odd behavior is just related to her trying to cover up for the fact that she's cheating and not actually being the black cat. I'm it could be both, but
yeah.
Okay.
The cheating seems like a good motive for being the black cat, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so Nancy still thinks that Francesca is their strongest suspect, and so she tasks George with following her for the rest of the day. Nancy then decides to go search Miss Friedlander's room again now that the police are done with it. And so she goes in and she looks in her desk, and in her desk drawer, Nancy finds a laptop that kind of seems like it's hidden underneath some files, which is just a weird place for a laptop to be. If you were using it, why would you stick it underneath all of these things? And she opens it up and kind of looks through all the files on it, and she finds a file called Scooter's Revenge, which is funny. But when she clicks on it, in the book it says she gets a black screen, which I'm what in the early aughts is this? Because if you open a file and there's nothing in it, it wouldn't be a black screen. It would just be a blank, empty file.
I feel like this was actually just a typo. They meant to say blank screen instead of black screen. I feel like it was actually just a typo that editing did not catch. I feel like there was actually one or two other typos that I noticed in this book as well. So it could just be...
Yeah, because I remember... I read this and I was a blank screen. I was what could have happened to this computer where you click on a file and the screen goes
black.
black, right?
Yeah.
What could that be? But no, she just meant that there's no files in it.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
But so Nancy keeps searching, and she finds a photo album. It's mostly pictures of Miss Friedlander growing up. And in one of the pictures, she's sitting with her parents, and on her lap is a black cat. The photo is labeled me, Mom, Dad, and Scooter. So Scooter must be the name of her black cat. What could Scooter have needed revenge for? Also, I just think that's such a cute name for a cat.
Scooter.
Scooter.
Yeah, that's really sweet.
But so Nancy calls Mrs. Cook and asks her for some background information on Miss Friedlander, see if she can understand this a little bit more. Earlier, we had like done some other background on like the students, and throughout that, we had learned that Miss Friedlander was actually from Portland. And so we kind of bring that up to Mrs. Cook and kind of ask her more information. And Mrs. Cook actually remembers that Lila's from LA, but before she moved to LA, she actually previously lived in Portland. So that's where Miss Friedlander is from. So is it possible that Lila and Miss Friedlander knew each other prior to coming here? They've both been kidnapped by the Black Cat, which is a very large coincidence, considering they're both from the same place.
Except Bess is not from Portland, so
Right. Yeah.
Just kidding, but
so Nancy gets the numbers of Miss Friedlander's references, like when she applied for the job, and she calls all of her references. Or she doesn't call. She calls one of them. She calls a family friend of Miss Friedlander, who Miss Friedlander gave as a reference. And after some questions, this family friend confirms for Nancy that, yes, both Miss Friedlander's parents passed away. They passed away tragically in a car accident. The car accident also killed her cat, Scooter. Cat Scooter was in the car with her parents. So tragic. But the circumstances surrounding the car accident are a little bit strange because the car hit a tree, but there was like no other cars around, and like the car didn't seem to malfunction. Like after the crash, they examined it, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with the car. So that's really weird. Why did they crash into the tree? And the family friend says that apparently Miss Friedlander's father developed a fainting disorder after some significant stress from a bad investment that he made, which essentially lost them all of their money. And so he and Miss Friedlander believe that this was likely the cause of the car accident, that her father likely fainted at the wheel, and so they crashed. And Nancy's like, oh, that's so interesting. What can you tell me more about the bad investment that he made? And he said, it was this, risky thing. And he made the investment based on the recommendation of his stockbroker, but it turned out to be, no good. And so they really blamed the stockbroker for this. And Nancy's like, oh, so weird. What was the name of the stockbroker? Do you remember? And he's like, oh yeah, it was Edgar Van Voorhees.
Wait a minute.
We know that name. That's Lila's father. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's pretty obvious to Nancy now what has happened. Miss Friedlander is the Black Cat. Her plan all along must have been to kidnap Lila Van Voorhees to extort money from and punish her father, Edgar Van Voorhees. She only quote-unquote kidnapped herself to make it look like she was a victim, and she wrote the other notes and sabotaged the other girls to frame them and cast suspicion off of herself to make it seem like it was just this larger conspiracy, when really all along it was about Lila and her father. She must have kept her Black Cat notes in the Scooter's Revenge folder on her laptop, but then deleted them once she left and was quote-unquote kidnapped so that no one would find them.
Why not delete the folder too?
I know, why not delete the whole folder?
Right.
So Nancy regroups with George and Mrs. Cook and explains all of this to them. And Mrs. Cook tells Nancy that Lila's father had plans to come into town to pay this ransom for Lila, but his plane was diverted because also, by the way, there's a massive blizzard happening right now. So he won't be able to get here with the money in time for 5 p.m. to pay this ransom on time. So now the only thing they can do is send Nancy and George into the blizzard to trek to the cemetery to put an envelope stuffed full of newspaper, like fake cash, into this cat urn, because also the police can't get here because the roads are so blocked. So
I love it. It's so good.
And also we really have no choice because we have to rescue Lila. Bess has also been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
So we are yes, we are going to do this to try to go save Bess, but this is So that's just the worst case scenario in like all situations. We don't
Mhm.
have the money. We don't have police backup. Like we don't have any other option but to go there if we want to see our friend alive. Like, ugh. So Nancy and George do this and they're trudging through this blizzard up to the cemetery and they get there and George ends up tripping and spraining her ankle because yeah, they're now in knee deep snow. Like
And it's like it's snowing so hard they can barely see like 6 feet in front
it's
of
like
them.
sideways. They're like looking around. They're like Nancy can barely see the headstone, so that's why George tripped over one, you know. And Nancy like helps George over to the porch of this mausoleum for some shelter because like literally it's like coming down. But George
Mhm.
obviously can't walk, so she has to like sit there while Nancy goes and finds this cat urn alone in the snow in a blizzard.
I'm sorry, the weather element just makes it so good.
It does. Also because I live in Vermont now and I had never like really experienced like a lot of snow, but like I remember and not I still really haven't like it hasn't snowed that much, but it has snowed to the point where like I understand now what they mean about like a whiteout.
Mhm.
Like you can't see anything when the snow is coming down hard enough. I haven't been in a blizzard, but like when the snow's come I can't see, it's like super fog. Like I
Mhm.
can't see to the road like outside of my house when it's snowing really hard. So
Jeez.
like I can't imagine like basically being blinded by snow. It's knee deep. You're trudging along. You can't move really fast. Probably wearing like a bulky coat too. So it's really awkward to try to be moving around and you're frantically searching for this black cat urn so that you can get fake money put in there on time just hoping that your best friend is going to be okay. Like so scary.
Mm.
So, but she looks around. She does end up finding one like headstone or like one like monument or whatever that the snow has been brushed off of it. And the only reason why like that would be the case is because the black cat or Miss Friedlander has like cleared the snow off so Nancy would see it.
Mhm.
And that does have the cat urn on it. So Nancy finds it. She puts the envelope in it and she goes and hides behind a nearby tree. And then moments later, a hooded figure comes out and takes the envelope. But she sees Nancy hiding behind the tree. So Nancy is like, crap, like she's gonna run. I'm not gonna be able to find her in all the snow. So she has to jump out and like confront her before she can run away and just hope that she'll give up where Bess and Lila are. And so she does, and then the hood falls back on the person, and it is indeed Miss Friedlander. Confirmed. She's the black cat. Nancy demands to Miss Friedlander that she take her to Bess and Lila. But Miss Friedlander pulls a knife on Nancy, like a butcher knife, and starts chasing her through this snow covered cemetery. This is so horror movie coded.
Yes.
And Nancy even says in the book that it felt like a horror movie because she couldn't move quickly because of the snow. She said it felt like a nightmare because you know how like in dreams where like you can't run
Mhm.
fast? She said that's what it felt like. She couldn't run fast because of the snow. And she's being chased by a lady with a knife. So scary. They run like all the way through this cemetery and they get to this cliff and Nancy is able to like grab onto this tree that's kind of like sticking out like horizontal over this cliff so she doesn't fall. But Miss Friedlander's momentum actually carries her over the cliff and she's only able to stop herself from falling by grabbing onto a root of this tree. And she tells Nancy, "You better help me up or you will never see Bess or Lila again."
Oh my gosh. Okay, so now we're in a little bit of a stalemate because Nancy knows, okay, if I help her up, she's just gonna stab me. But if I don't, we'll never know where Bess and Lila are.
Right.
But then suddenly, 3 figures start coming towards her in the snow. And of course, we can't really make out who they are until they get close enough. And it is Bess and George and Lila. Thank goodness.
Woohoo!
'Cause where was their hiding place? Inside the mausoleum. where George is like taking shelter right now. So George happened to be just like, sitting there hoping for the best, waiting for Nancy, and she hears sounds inside and was able to like use her bike key to pry the hinges off the doors to the mausoleum, which are like locked, by the way.
Hell yeah, George.
Yeah, go George, because I guess like Bess and Lila also didn't really want to make any noise from within there because they were afraid it was Miss Friedlander outside.
Right.
So they weren't even like shouting for help or anything. George just heard something, and it was like, hold on, a mausoleum shouldn't be making noises like that. But so they do get Mrs. Friedlander up off the cliff and tie her arms using George's belt so she can't get away. Both Bess and Lila are okay, don't worry. But they were chloroformed. Miss Friedlander chloroformed them to get them to the mausoleum. So obviously they were unconscious when they got there, and then they didn't even know where they were being kept because it was so dark in there when they woke up. But she did feed them, at least, so that's good, I guess. But they all huddle together and kind of force Miss Friedlander back to campus with them. They deliver her right to Miss Cook's office, where they question her and call the police. They have to, like, tie her up a little bit more so that she can't get away, and they just keep questioning her while they wait for the police to get there. She does admit to kidnapping both the girls. Bess was only kidnapped because she saw her trying to get Tassie into a carrier. Miss Friedlander was actually trying to arrange another curse for Nancy, which is why she was putting the cat in the carrier, but Bess interrupted her, obviously. She does also admit to framing Francesca with the Black Cat book, that she did put that in her room, and she even said that she was having so much fun doing all this just because she wants people to be as miserable as she is.
She literally says that. Like, she literally is like, yeah, I want people to be as miserable as I am, which is like, yeah, that's the reason why, bullies, like, bully other people. But I have never met a bully who is so self-aware as to know that that is why they were bullying people.
Oh my gosh.
Was self-aware psychopath. So I guess good for you, Miss Friedlander.
Gosh. But Lila at this point says that, your family's tragedy was not my father's fault. It's a shame, but my father actually told your father that they should make a small investment because this was such a risky move. It was actually Mrs. Friedlander's father's choice to invest all of his money, all of it. And actually, Lila's family even moved away from Portland. They moved to LA because Mrs. Friedlander's father made so many accusations about ruining him or whatever towards Lila's father that, yeah, they moved away just because of that. So anyway, they lock Miss Friedlander in the closet, and then they just eat snacks until the cops get there. And then at this point, while they're just, snacking and waiting, Tassie jumps up. He's like on the outside of the window and is just sitting on the windowsill. And Miss Cook is like, don't let him in.
Yes! It's a blizzard outside.
It's a cat. But anyway, they do let him in, despite Mrs. Cook. And Lila says, oh, we're so glad to have Tassie because he is actually a black cat that brings us good luck and not bad. The end.
The end. Yeah. I love that.
I know.
I mean, yeah, I am so glad that they decided to end it that way because of the bad reputation that black cats get. I was a little bit annoyed with their characterization of Tassie. I mean, I was happy to see that, yes, some of the girls like kind of took pity on him, I guess, by like feeding him. But in general, the way they kind of talk about cats in this book was a little bit like they're a little bit more of a nuisance than they are like things that we should be helping and protecting.
Right.
And so I was happy to see that they ended it on this note so that kids reading this book wouldn't be like, oh, we hate black cats. Black cats are bad luck, because it's not true, you guys. It's not true. Black cats are so affectionate and so lovely, and they are good luck. My black cats are the best thing that's ever happened to me. So yeah. Team Black Cat.
They don't deserve that at all.
They
Poor
don't.
babies.
They don't deserve their bad rap. Also, did you know that they are the least adopted black cats because of their color? Like,
I'm not surprised. It's so sad.
So, save a life. Adopt a black cat.
But how crazy that a story you think it's going to be about little kitties and boarding school drama and cliquey gossip
Yes.
and just,
We end
like
up
girly stuff. It
Yeah.
ends up being like this attempted murder show with butcher knives.
Yes, psychopathic teacher chasing you with a knife through a snow-covered cemetery. Horrifying.
Uh-huh. Oh my
Horrifying.
gosh.
Also, I thought it was kind of hilarious and weirdly prophetic that Lila's last name is Van Voorhees.
Right.
And Voorhees is obviously the last name of a very famous horror character. It's Jason, right? Jason Voorhees? Or is it
Yeah.
Freddy? It's one of them.
I think
But
it's Jason.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
anyway.
it's Jason. But anyway, so it's like
Yeah.
should have been a clue that we were in
Mhm.
for it. Should have been
Yeah.
a clue. And I definitely feel like someone who wrote this book must have been a horror movie fan
Oh, yeah.
because of that inclusion and the inclusion of Nancy literally saying it's like feels like a horror-filled nightmare running through a snow-covered cemetery. So yeah. Yeah.
Eliza.
I know. Okay. God, the fact that it's like, okay, yes, some of her peers do not like her. Like but mostly it's just though that they're pissed at her for accusing them of being the Black Cat,
Mhm.
which is valid. But also, it's super valid, in my opinion, of Eliza actually accusing everybody of being the Black Cat. Because, by the way, let's not forget she was assaulted.
Mhm.
Like, I thought, like, okay, we're gonna get to the end and we're gonna find out that yes, Eliza did actually cut her own hair, and so all the things that she was putting on was really just airs or whatever. It's not real. But oh no, Miss Freelander cut her hair. I don't think she comes out and admits it, but she says she admits to doing all the sabotage on the other girls. That's just what she says. Let me hold up. Let me find it so that we can be super clear. You sure were busy organizing all those curses, Angela. Angela's Miss Friedlander's first name. You swapping Ramona's CD, putting tar on Lucy's sneaker, and cutting Eliza's hair. Swapping Lila's eyeglasses and deleting Kalicia's thesis. You must have worked hard planning all those things. Yes, but I had fun, Miss Friedlander said gleefully. So
she did it.
She doesn't deny doing that. So she must have done it, right?
It's bad enough that she was assaulted, but for an adult, an authority figure in her life to come into her bedroom at night while she's sleeping and she doesn't even know that this person is there, that's creepy enough as it is. But then to assault her during this?
Doesn't matter that she actually wanted to have her hair cut, by the way. She didn't get to choose when and how that happened. So it's assault. Like, Now, maybe she wasn't as upset as she would have been had she not wanted to cut her hair, but still horrifying and scary anyway, and not good, So so the whole like Eliza accusing other people and being called dramatic, I'm like, step the F off. Step the F off. This girl clearly got the worst of it from the Black Cat.
Yeah.
Clearly got the
except
worst
for
of it.
the kidnapping, but
yeah, except for Lila.
Yeah.
But like, yes, she's going around and accusing people. And the fact that the people who are vilifying her for that and calling her dramatic and blah, 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 are the adults in this situation. Primarily Mrs. Cook, but also Nancy and George, who are assistant teachers, literally authority figures. I mean, maybe not as much as the rest of them, but like still adults, still in a position of authority. And they're all like, George, there's even one point where like Nancy tasks George with following Eliza. And she's like, oh, like, I don't know that I'll survive like having to watch Eliza. This is like a 16, 17-year-old girl grow up. Like, it makes me so angry. It makes me so angry.
Do we even know? I was looking for where it is in the chapter. It's chapter 8. Do we even know that Eliza did actually want to cut her hair?
No, we don't actually know. Someone else said that. Someone said that in intermission, and Bess overheard them, but they were talking about Eliza. We didn't hear that from Eliza herself.
Right, so it's just a rumor that Eliza wanted it.
Oh, when you say it like that, Kori.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's actually not that bad because...
But yeah, no, that's like saying, okay, I'm sorry, this is going to be another mention of rape. Maybe we should put a content warning at the top of this. But that's like saying someone who was sexually assaulted or raped. I don't want to sanitize the language, right? Someone who was raped because they wanted to, like, you know, lose their virginity or something,
Mm-hmm.
that it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That she didn't, or she wanted this part in the play, but didn't want the hair for it. And a wig would have been unacceptable.
Which, by the way, she does end up wearing a wig.
She does. So they had a wig.
So they had a wig.
Or they were able to get a wig. No
it
problem.
wasn't a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Just wasn't ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like another thing that, so something similar happened to me, Kori. I was in theater in high school, and I was in a play where my director wanted me to cut my hair. So it was the reverse. She wanted me to cut my hair. I didn't want to cut my hair. You remember in high school, I had really long hair, and I loved it. Everybody loved it. And I was like, I don't want to. Of course, my director didn't force me to, so that was great. But it was like, it was like a thing. It was like a control thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like an agency thing. And like having someone say to me, like, you need to cut your hair, and me being like, you don't get to tell me what to do with my body. Like, you know, like that, it's that. And so like the concept that like, oh yeah, actually Eliza should have, like, was being told by her teacher that she needed to not cut her hair. It's just, again, that control thing, that agency over women's bodies, like people feeling like they have the ability to make these decisions for women. Her drama teacher, who is a male, by the way.
Oh, there's another man. There we go. Yep.
And so like there's that, and then when like her decision gets like ripped away from her, we still somehow find a way to blame her after the fact for that, being like, oh well, she wanted it,
or it's not that bad actually. It's okay that it happened at all, because really she wanted short hair. Supposedly, some people think that she may have wanted short hair. And therefore, she's so overdramatic that she's never going to be happy until the entire school is shut down. Justice for Eliza.
Justice for Eliza. Justice for Eliza. And you know, I would faint. I would engineer a whole situation where I could faint on stage if someone had cut my hair off.
Right.
Oh, and it's not even, she wasn't even, I think the most horrifying part for me is the fact that she was asleep. Is that she was unconscious. And so, yeah, it's not just the fact that she had her choice taken away from her. It's the fact that she wasn't like aware of it when it was happening, and then to wake up and to learn, like the fact that someone did something to you where you couldn't fight back. You couldn't scream. You couldn't say anything. You couldn't make your voice heard. And someone was there in the room with you in the middle of the night. Like, what else could they have done? Like, you don't know, you know, like
you have no idea.
You have no idea. You don't know what happened. Like,
you're never going to feel safe sleeping in your own bed again after that. And then you go tell the people, your guardians, who are supposed to be watching out for you, and they don't believe you. They call you over dramatic. And then when you start to say, like, you put your foot down and you're like, no, something needs to be done, you accuse somebody and you get detention for it.
Yes,
the coach gave her
detention for accusing Rosie. And Miss Friedlander threatens to give her detention when she accuses Francesca in class. She gets in trouble. She's like, Eliza, oh yeah. Now that we're talking about it more,
it's horrible.
This is horrible. It's like the most analogous to like rape culture. Like, I think this is one of the most vivid kind of analogies to that we've come across in a Nancy Drew book. And so, oof. Oh, it's rough. That's rough.
Oh, it's just this silly thing because it's just her hair. No, it's her choices. No.
Yeah. So, yeah, justice for Eliza. Justice for Eliza. Okay. Anyway.
Justice for the cats, justice for Eliza.
Well, I want to talk about, another traumatic thing that happens, right? Lila and Bess getting kidnapped, and they are drugged, taken to this crypt, locked up in the dark, where they are kept in the dark for, I think it's like 2 days.
Yeah.
Or at least a full day.
It's at least overnight.
It's at least overnight. Bess is at least overnight. I think Lila's happened the previous day or earlier that day. I can't remember.
Could be 2 nights for Lila, yeah.
Right. And they are kept in the dark for an extended period of time. And when they come out, they say they're okay. They've been fed. Great. But then they go, after they take Miss Friedlander back to the dorm or to the tower, whatever building they were in. And they lock her up and they're just kind of like decompressing after everything. They're eating snacks. The lights go out because it's a blizzard. So the power goes out. Bess panics. She drops the food that she was eating. She drops it. She freaks out. She's like legitimately traumatized of being in the dark. And Miss Friedlander goes and gets a candle and she's like, it's okay. I know I'm safe right now or whatever. But like,
poor Bess.
Also, Bess was just reading all of those like horrifying Edgar Allan Poe stories. And then to get locked in a mausoleum
in the dark for 2 days.
I would not recover. I simply would not. How horrifying.
You'd be, what was his name in the last book? The rock star who was like just so traumatized he couldn't even react or whatever. Ian. Yeah, who was just like staring at the wall because he was so overwhelmed by it.
Well, talk about a fear of the dark forever.
Yeah.
Like, golly. So, like, we're really putting the women through it in this book. And, like, poor Bess, who, like, she didn't even sign on to help investigate this mystery with Nancy. She was at home. She was reading, being cozy in the snow, and she's worried about her friends. She comes over to, like, check on them. They're like, while you're here, Bess, can you follow someone for me? She's like, sure. And she ends up getting chloroformed that night.
Getting kidnapped
that night.
Oh, my gosh.
It's too much. It's too much.
Buddy system, y'all.
Seriously. Okay. And also the fact that, like, she goes into the woods. This is where bad stuff happens in the woods, you guys. Don't go into the woods alone. Yeah. Maybe don't go into the woods at all, you know? Oh, my gosh. This woman, Miss Friedlander, is such a psychopath. Like, I understand something very traumatic happened to her. I understand she lost all of her family in one fell swoop. That's horrible. Horrifying. And I can even understand how you would blame someone. You would choose to blame someone for that. You know, whether or not you know the whole story. I feel like that's natural. That's probably a natural coping mechanism. But then to be like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go terrorize teen girls in another state. I'm going to move to terrorize and take my trauma out on these poor teen girls who have nothing to do with this. Just to try to get back at the guy who I think is responsible in a weirdly circular way.
Was she going to kill Lila? Or was she just going to take her dad's money?
She's going to take the money, I assume. I don't know.
Is that the revenge? Okay, whatever. She is like, her mind is so...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, you would think if you really wanted revenge, which I do not necessarily condone revenge in this kind of way, obviously. But if you really wanted revenge, you would think you'd go after the guy you wanted revenge on in a more direct manner.
Well, I just thought like, oh, I'll kill your daughter because like I had my family killed, you know.
Maybe. But like I feel like you'd sabotage her car or something.
Right.
I don't know. It just feels weirdly like it was this whole plot. It was a whole thing. Like, the fact that she, like, cooked up this whole thing with Edgar Allan Poe, she looped so many girls into it to make it seem like it was this big, huge conspiracy. It's like, this was really calculated, and there was a lot of steps, and it was really complicated. You had to write and deliver notes. You had to, like, arrange for all of these instances of sabotage. Like, took a lot of forethought and planning. Like, all of it was to get at one person. It's just really extreme.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see what else. Oh, so we talked a little bit in our previous episode about we wanted to read this book specifically because we wanted to know more of the lore behind Waverly Academy.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I'm a little disappointed in that regard because I don't feel like there was a whole lot there about the lore of Waverly. The only thing we really get is kind of the description of the building and the
Yeah.
buildings.
Hmm.
There are a few different buildings. There is the main building, and then there's like separate classroom buildings, and I think some separate dorm buildings, which all make sense. But we don't really know much about like the school itself or the
Right.
founding. I mean, we do know that that main building was built in the 1890s. And then we also know that it is a school just for high school girls. So
Hmm.
there isn't an elementary or like middle or anything
Hmm.
like that. No other schools. It's just for high school girls. And of course the location is somewhat near River Heights at least.
Hmm.
So I was really hoping for more.
Yeah.
I was wanting to know more about the layout of campus. I was wanting to know more about like the structure of the school day and
Yeah.
like kind of what classes the girls are offered. Oh, we do learn a little bit that it is a it's kind of a popular school for international students.
Oh, yeah.
Francesca is from Italy. She's an Italian exchange student. And then I think there's someone else. I think I think it's implied that Sindhu is, but we don't get confirmation on
Mm.
that. And then I want to say there's one more, but I can't remember who it is. Rosie, maybe.
I don't know.
But so it's a popular international school, so that's interesting.
Hmm.
But other than that, we don't really get a whole lot, which I was sad about. But
The game, the Miss Cook character is just like, she's not a phone character or anything
right,
like that, but it is still the premise that like the headmistress of the school has called me to like pose as, well, it's in the game she poses as a student, but in the book obviously it's a teacher. But yeah,
right.
to like come undercover and investigate all this stuff. I don't know. Everything Miss Cook does bothers me a little bit with the like forcing Nancy to come over. She's like, cancel
Yeah,
your bike ride. Get over here right
yeah.
now. And then like doesn't even get, like, she asks Nancy to say yes. And after she does say yes, but then it's like, okay, and now you're going to do this. And it's all
Mhm.
these assignments. It's like, ma'am, you are not my teacher anymore. You
Mhm.
need to,
Mhm.
she never was Nancy's teacher, but that
Right.
does make me question, if it's this close to River Heights and she's friends with Carson, why would Nancy not have gone to this school? You know?
Yeah,
Anyway, so.
maybe. Maybe that could answer some of our questions about Nancy. If Nancy went to like a weird boarding school kind of situation, then like I don't know, maybe she graduated early, maybe she I don't know. Like I feel like that could explain maybe like some of her not being in school right now kind
Mhm.
of thing, cuz clearly she's not in school right now.
Right.
Clearly in this book she's not, because she is over 18. It's February. Class is clearly in session. She's not in high school or college, it seems like, you know?
Mhm.
So neither Bess nor George are either, which is, I find, the most suspicious.
Mhm.
Because that doesn't seem right. Seems like one of them has to be going to school right now.
Nah.
But like, yeah, maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe Miss Cook put such a bad taste in her mouth about education that she was like, I'm taking a gap
Good.
year.
Yeah. Just seems like the type of situation that Carson would put Nancy in a school like this. You
Yeah.
know, it's really close by. He knows the headmistress personally. They're friends. He's got all this money. Seems like something that he would do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt she boarded. Like, if she lived
Right.
close enough, she would probably, I feel like, live at
Just
home.
live at home. Yeah.
But if she did go to an all-girls school, I do think that explains a little bit of her relationship with Ned.
Mm.
She didn't get a whole lot of socialization with boys when she was growing up.
It's like, finally, there's a man. I need to just attach myself to him.
Latched on to the first one she got.
Oh, goodness.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's funny. Oh, man.
Other differences? Do we want to talk about any other differences between the book and the game?
Sure. I'm trying to think what else.
Yeah.
Oh, I really thought, I can't remember what point it was. I really thought that there was going to be something where like we find out that one of the girls who like either put the tar in the room or had the book or something, that it was going to be like the game where the black cat was blackmailing them into doing their bidding for her, you know?
Well, I really thought, and I mentioned this to you earlier, Corey, I really thought it was going to be a secret society kind of thing,
Mhm.
because all these girls were doing such suspicious things, and I still think we don't really get answers to a lot of the sneaky, suspicious behavior that was going on, except for the fact that, I don't know, they're teen girls, so maybe they're just sneaking around
Right.
doing shenanigans. Who knows?
Who says there's not a secret society?
True. Could be. I really thought they were all in on it together, and I really thought that they had some kind of goal. Maybe it was to get Miss Cook out of there.
Right.
Who knows?
Or Miss Friedlander. They
Or
all
Miss
hate
Friedlander,
her.
whatever, because it was like Rosie was sneaking out of the woods. She had stuff with her gym bag. Francesca had the book, and Francesca also had other weird behavior. She was like, she acted like spacey, like not really aware of what was going on. It was always kind of like out of it, which was kind of weird. And she like wouldn't tell a straight story about where she had been. And Kalisha, I thought, was super suspicious, like just running around screaming and crying about how she's been cursed, and happens to do that right in front of Nancy George. And then later is like, oh, Miss Cook needs to see you right away, you know, Lila's missing. Like, well, how did you know that? And I don't know.
Yep.
All of them were super suspicious.
Yeah.
All of them. So I'm kind of sad that that's not what we got, because I do love a story about girls working together.
Yes. Teamwork.
But, you know, it's okay.
Gosh.
It's okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good one.
A really good one. Really solid. Really solid. A fast read. I feel like this one's only like 16 chapters, and I zoomed through it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just because of how suspenseful it was. I was like, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
What is going on here? I loved it. Yeah.
Flashlight score?
Ooh.
I have to give it a 5.
Really?
I think I do. Oh, maybe like a 4.5.
I think I would give it a 4.5.
Okay.
I don't think it quite deserves more than that, because I do have an issue with some of the characterization of the girls. I do wish we had gotten, I wish we knew more about all of the girls, or we had less girls. I wanted more rich characterization. Instead of it felt like a lot of like kind of stereotyping of characters, or like putting characters into boxes so we didn't have to like know very much about them, you know? And so I wanted better characterization, wanted more characterization. But other than that, I feel like the mystery was pretty solid. I would have taken it in a different direction, but I liked it. I would go so far as to love it, because it is like a boarding school mystery, and I love boarding school mysteries. But I don't think it's the best Nancy Drew book I've ever read. You know?
Yeah.
Some of the files are just way too good.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
I'm like, I can't compare this to the final scene, which is a real 5-star book, which I feel like has somewhat similar vibes in its like drama, you know?
Definitely.
And final scene is just so much better, you know? So I think, 4.5.
Just like the rest of the ones that we've done in this block, I can definitely see why Her Interactive would have chosen this as the basis for their game. I think that all the changes that they made in order to get the final version of the game was just absolutely perfect choices. So, excellent.
Totally agree. Great book. Great adaptation in Mornings at Waverly Academy. Great all around.
Yes.
Snaps.
Oh, it's been so fun to do this block. I love this theme.
Yes. It was a great one.
We do love a good theme here at Regular Nancy Drew, so perfect.
Oh, I'm so excited for the next one. We're not going to tell you about it yet, but I'm really pumped for the next group of episodes that we're going to be doing. We do have one special episode that's actually next on the docket before we get to that. So I'm also really excited about that.
Oh my gosh.
Lots of great things coming. Kori, do you want to tell them about the next episode?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm so excited. So as you probably know, about once a year, we do a little history of Nancy Drew episode. And now is the time. So the next episode is going to be, of course, another history of. It is the history of the Drew crew. So we're going to go through all of Nancy's friends, obviously Carson, Bess, George, Ned, everybody who's in the Drew crew, and just talk about like how were they first introduced? How were they first conceptualized as the character? And then what changes happened to them kind of along the way in the course of the franchise, through all the adaptations, all that kind of stuff. So I'm so excited about it. It's going to be such a fun one.
Super super pumped. I love talking about the Drew crew because I feel like it's just so interesting, the choices they get made to kind of talk about who gets to accent our, obviously, Nancy, our main character, you know, and just kind of why, like, the concept of, like, foils for characters and, like, you know, those kinds of choices, just I could write a thesis on. I feel like, so I'm really excited to talk about it with all of you. Yeah.
It feels like every character definitely had a specific purpose or like a specific thing that they need to do for Nancy for like the context of the story. So yeah, like being the foil there or being the one to introduce the mystery in the first place. It's all very interesting of how each character's used. So I'm excited to dig more into that because we really haven't done a ton of that in the past.
Yeah. Did I talk about I don't remember what episode this was in or if it was in an episode or in a scoop sash. It may have been in a scoop sash, but I think, and I'm excited to talk about this too, I think that Carson is actually the most important person of the Drew crew.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I feel like you have said that before. It may have been in the CW show when we covered that because the usage of Carson in that is a little bit different as well. So yeah, the way that we have Carson introduced is very, very key to how everything else kind of falls. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's not completely done written yet, but Bess alone has like 2 pages for herself. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, just get ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen has her own page because Helen is just so interesting.
Helen is fascinating.
Yeah.
Helen is fascinating. Oh my gosh. Well, regular Drews, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
thanks for listening.